let me ask you something right away. What if I told you the BBC has officially confirmed Doctor Who's return, but in the very same breath, they might have doomed the show forever? Would you call it a victory or a funeral dressed up as a party? Because here's the shocking truth. Yes, Doctor Who is coming back, but the question we need to ask is what version of Doctor Who is even returning? Is it the Disney-backed blockbuster with the glossy production values and the corporate fingerprints stamped across every scene? Or is it the struggling BBC drama, barely hanging on, forced to reinvent itself once again to survive, like the Doctor regenerating in desperation, not in triumph? You see, I can't stop thinking about this. The BBC's announcement that the show will return sounds like good news. But buried in the fine print, in the whispers, in the things they didn't say, is a darker reality. They confirmed its return, but at what cost? A spin-off may be sacrificed. A hiatus is looming. The Disney deal dead. And yes, whispers of a brand new Doctor far sooner than anyone expected. And isn't that the cruel irony? They confirm Doctor Who's return, but they make us question if it's even the show we fell in love with in the first place. So let's break this down. Because, trust me, this is not just a routine. See you next season. This is a coded warning. And if you think I'm exaggerating, stay with me, because by the end of this video you'll see the puzzle pieces locked together. But first, let me give you a personal thought. When I first heard the BBC's confirmation, I reacted the way most fans did. Relief. Excitement. Maybe even a smug "I told you so" moment. Because after months of silence, of rumors, of panic, finally we had something official. But then, like a good Doctor Who cliffhanger, the joy twisted into dread. Because when you listen closely, the BBC never promised stability. They never promised Disney's money. They never promised the spin-offs we were teased. All they promised was, who's coming back? But how many times has the Doctor come back broken? We've seen it. Gallifrey burned, companions abandoned, lives fractured. The return is never clean, and this one feels messy already. So let's talk about the cracks. The first one, the spin-offs. Remember when Russell T Davies promised us a whole new Whoniverse? Multiple projects, different characters, a shared timeline like Marvel. That dream was supposed to save Doctor Who, give it the size and scope of modern franchises. But the BBC's new confirmation, suspiciously quiet about any of that. If the main series is coming back, but no spin-offs are mentioned, what does that tell you? Were they cut, paused, or worse, quietly scrapped before even filming a frame? Here's the forbidden knowledge the BBC doesn't want you to focus on. Spin-offs are expensive. They rely on big streaming partners like Disney to bankroll them. Without that deal, those extra shows may simply not exist. Meaning, the Whoniverse Russell teased may already be dead before it ever began. And then comes the second crack, a hiatus. Yes, they confirmed the show is coming back, but did you notice they didn't give us a clear when? There's a huge difference between renewed and ready. BBC insiders are already whispering about gaps. Delays? Maybe even another year, long absence before a proper season appears, which raises the terrifying question, what if this return looks less like a celebration and more like a survival measure? What if they're dragging it back, just to keep the rights, just to keep the name alive, while the actual creative vision collapses? And then, of course, there's the Disney deal. That shiny partnership that was supposed to give us blockbuster budgets and worldwide exposure. Suddenly, it's gone quiet. Too quiet. The BBC's confirmation never mentions Disney, not once. If the partnership has crumbled, it leaves Doctor Who stranded. And for a show that just spent 2 seasons styling itself like a Disney-funded juggernaut, what happens when the funding faucet shuts off? Do we go back to cardboard sets and cramped sound stages? Does the show shrink at the very moment it promised to expand? And finally, the most dangerous whisper, a new Doctor. Yes, Ncuti Gatwa just stepped into the role. Yes, Billie Piper shocked us all by returning. But the longer this uncertainty drags on, the more likely it is that the BBC may decide a radical pivot is the only way to save the brand. Another regeneration, another reboot, another gamble, and this one may come sooner than anyone is prepared for. So let's not be fooled by the headlines. Doctor Who is confirmed to return sounds like good news. But in reality, it's a headline designed to keep fans calm while the storm rages beneath the surface. Here's the question I'm looping back to again and again: Doctor Who will return, but will it survive the return? Or will the very act of confirming it be the beginning of its undoing? Stick with me, because in the next part, we're going to dig into the deeper secrets, the forbidden knowledge hidden between the BBC's words. We're going to talk about why Russell T Davies may be in more danger than anyone realizes, how the Disney deal collapsing changes everything, and why the spin-offs may have been sacrificed to keep the TARDIS barely afloat. And before we go deeper, let me just say this: if you're as obsessed with uncovering these truths as I am, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Not because it helps me, because it keeps you in the loop. When the BBC plays games with our favorite show, we need a place that cuts through the noise. And that's what we're building here. Now, brace yourself, because the story gets even darker on the inside. So let's piece this puzzle together, because the BBC has given us confirmation of Doctor Who's return. Yes, but hidden inside that announcement are clues that point to an entirely different reality than what fans are celebrating. A reality where the show might return, but not in the way we've known it for decades. And here's where the problem begins. Let's start with the hiatus rumor. Officially, the BBC says the Doctor will return. But insiders claim the gap could be far longer than the fans are prepared for. Months, possibly years. We could be looking at another wilderness years situation, like the dark period between 1989 and 2005, when the TARDIS sat silent. Imagine that. The BBC parading the announcement of Doctor Who's return, only for us to wait years before a proper season drops. Why would they do that? To buy time, to renegotiate, to reset the board completely. And this ties into the Disney deal collapse. Disney was supposed to be the powerhouse partner, giving Doctor Who the global reach it has never had before. It was hyped as the streaming salvation of the franchise. And yet, here we are. Silence. Quiet cancellations of marketing campaigns. Abandoned promises. The mouse walked away, leaving the BBC with the pieces. Which raises the chilling question if Doctor Who's future is no longer with Disney, then with who? Here's the controversial truth nobody wants to say out loud. The BBC may have been forced into confirming Doctor Who's return just to stop panic. A PR move, not a roadmap. They needed to prevent fans from thinking the show was dead. But if the infrastructure, the money, the streaming partnership is gone, then what kind of return can they really promise? That's the cost. Now let's dig deeper into the spin-offs. Remember when Russell T Davies teased that we were about to enter a Marvel-style Doctor Who universe? A cinematic scale expansion, Unite shows, companion-focused stories, even talk of a Torchwood revival? Where are they now? Delayed, cancelled, or stuck in limbo? The BBC's confirmation makes no mention of them, which tells us something critical. If Doctor Who does return, it may be stripped bare. No shared universe, no multi-series experiment, just the core show, and even that is hanging by a thread. But what about the Doctor themselves? This is the most explosive question yet, because sources close to production say that Russell T Davies is not only considering bringing back a new Doctor sooner than planned, but also using this hiatus as the perfect excuse to regenerate. Again, think about that. Ncuti Gatwa barely had time to establish himself, and already whispers suggest he could be swapped out for another actor if contracts and global deals shift. That's not just a casting choice, that's legacy defining chaos. And here's the forbidden knowledge. This isn't the first time it's happened. Back in the 1980s, after declining ratings, the BBC quietly discussed regenerating the sixth Doctor Colin Baker far earlier than planned, not because of story, but because of behind-the-scenes politics. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And this might be that rhyme. Let me ask you directly, would you still watch Doctor Who if Ncuti Gatwa's run was cut short for business reasons instead of story reasons? Be honest in the comments. I want to know if fans value stability in their Doctor, or if the thrill of unpredictability is enough to keep you hooked. And while you think about that, let me throw this theory at you. What if the BBC's confirmation is less about Doctor Who returning as we know it, and more about Doctor Who being rebooted? Imagine a clean slate, a brand new Doctor, a brand new timeline, maybe even a season 1, all over again. It's happened before with Hollywood franchises. Could the BBC be preparing us for that level of reset? It sounds extreme, but here's the evidence. Leaks from inside the BBC boardroom suggest that international buyers don't want to jump into a show with 60 years of continuity. Too confusing, too overwhelming. They want fresh blood, clean branding, something new to sell to audiences who've never stepped inside the TARDIS before. So ask yourself, is Doctor Who returning really a victory, or the start of Doctor Who as something completely unrecognizable? And this is where things get eerie. Because in all the BBC's talk about Doctor Who's return, not once have they mentioned the word when the Doctor will return. That's all we got. No dates, no schedule, no streaming confirmation. Just a vague promise. That's not confirmation, that's survival mode. And the cost, possibly everything we've loved about Doctor Who's modern era. The partnerships, the spin-offs, the stable lead actor, the promise of consistent storytelling. All of it may be stripped down to a skeleton crew, a Hail Mary attempt to keep the brand alive. And we're meant to clap, to cheer, to say, Doctor Who is saved. But deep down you feel it, don't you? Something's wrong. Here's my personal take. The BBC is buying time. They know the backlash would be nuclear if they said nothing. So instead, they confirmed the return, but left every single detail shrouded in mystery. Because right now, they don't even have those details. So the real question we need to ask isn't, is Doctor Who returning? The question is, what version of Doctor Who is coming back? Stick with me, because the next part is where things get dark. We're going to uncover exactly how the BBC might use 2026, yes, the year of Doctor Who's next big anniversary, to quietly rewrite the show's DNA forever. So let's talk about what all of this really means. The BBC has confirmed that Doctor Who will return. That's the headline. That's the big moment fans have been begging for. But behind the curtain, behind the polished press release, lies a trail of unanswered questions, eerie silences, and decisions that could shape or shatter the show's next decade. Because sure, the Doctor is coming back, but is it our Doctor? Or is this a return that feels more like a reboot? And that's where the story gets stranger. Multiple insiders have whispered the same phrase, "It won't look the same." And that should terrify you. Because every time those words are used in this industry, they usually mean one thing: major cuts, rebrandings, or compromises that gut the identity of a show in exchange for survival. Think about it. Why confirm the Doctor's return now?